Welcome, everybody. Good evening. I like to be punctual, and I think half of Albuquerque has already sent a message or let me know that they want this to go fast. I promise I'm not the only one who lives to stay here. Welcome this evening. It's May 11th, 2023. I will call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order. I believe all counselors are going to be present today, with Counselor Grout attending via Zoom, and Counselor Pena should be here shortly. Members of the public, city staff, and the media have the ability to view this meeting in person and on live streams through the 4 different platforms: GovTV on Comcast Channel 16, the GovTV website, YouTube, and Zoom webinar. The live streams can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers. Also, this meeting is closed captioned, and you may enable the closed captioning services on your television or device at this time. The video recording of this meeting will also remain available for viewing at any time on the City Council's website. Council staff is available via telephone if members of the public need assistance finding the videos online. Please call 505-768-3100 for assistance during business hours, which are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tonight is the third of 3 public hearings the council is required to hold on the city's operating budget to consider amendments or a committee substitute. No live public comment will be taken tonight, although written comments were accepted. At the end of tonight's meeting, the budget, as amended or substituted, will be sent to the Monday, May 15th City Council meeting for adoption. Live public comment will be accepted at the May 15th Council meeting. So agenda item A is R122, establishing 1-year objectives for the City of Albuquerque in fiscal year 2024 to meet 5-year goals. I move it do pass. And there's a second from Councilor Feeble-Corn and Davis. There's a committee substitute on your iPads for R122, and I would like to move the committee substitute with a do pass. Second from Councilor Feeble-Corn. Councilors, any questions or comments? Any comments from the administration?
Madam Chair, very quickly, did you say R122 or R22? I apologize.
It's R122.
122?
122, yes, for the objectives. We're good? Okay. All right, well, I hear somebody coming down the hall. Trying to just give it one more second. All right, so we're gonna end up doing roll call this evening with Councilor Grout online. So go ahead if we wanna go ahead, take that roll call vote, please.
Councilor Benton?
Councilor Benton, welcome. We are on R122, the objectives the committee substitute that's in the iPads.
Thank you. Councilor Davis? Councilor Feeble-Corn?
Yes.
Councilor Grout?
Yes.
Councilor Jones?
Yes.
Councilor Lewis? Councilor Lewis?
Yes.
Councilor Pena? Councilor Sanchez?
Yes.
Councilor Bassan?
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
And I see that it says here that there's amendments to the bill, but I don't see any anywhere else, so. Hello, Counselor. Any other amendments or information needed, counselors, for R122? All right, so.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
Chair,
Counselor Grout.
I have one. I think it's for this one. Committee sub amendment 1 on page 3, line 24, entitled Gibson Health Hub operating.
Counselor Grout.
Increase the amount. Yes.
Counselor Grout, this
Yes.
is for the objectives on R122.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Did you have any amendments for the objectives?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. All right, so with that, we will go ahead and take a vote on R122 as substituted, please. Yes,
I
Mr. Rao.
apologize, Madam Chair. We do have one comment. I think the chief would like to
Okay.
comment on objective on page 5, objective number 19, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, absolutely. Chief? Good evening.
Madam Chair, members of council, the only recommendation we have is if it's possible to clarify the language to put that we will remain in operational compliance per the DOJ mandate on that. The way I read it right now, it could possibly be interpreted that we would do that annually, which would be a burden of us on the department of about 24 training hours. And I did the math earlier, and because we have to backfill a lot of times in overtime, it would cost us upwards of about $1 million to backfill for the training. So if we could just stay on the DOJ schedule, which is what our scheduled training is, and stay in compliance with that, it would clarify the language and help us out.
And so, Mr. Muniz, did you capture what Chief is suggesting? Or, I think that being that this is a one-year objective, it's something that can be changed every year when we pass this ordinance, or this resolution. I see that Councilor Davis also has a comment. Well, no, go ahead, I can finish too later, once you figure it.
No, Madam Chair, I was going to say, if the chief has some technical language, I'd be happy to sponsor it as an amendment, unless someone else wants to do that. But I think we've captured the intent here, and we'd be happy to let the clerk work that out with the administration before Monday, if you'd be willing. I'd be happy to make that motion.
Chief, does that sound amenable to you, that we can, Councilor Davis will help get that polished with you? Thank you, Councilor, that's fine with me, and then we can go ahead and have that amendment to the bill on Monday's meeting.
Madam Chair, Councilor Davis, thank you.
Thank you. You're good? Okay. All right. So, any other questions or comments, councilors? Administration? We're good? All right, so we will take the vote on R122 as substituted.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Grout,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan. That passes
Yes.
unanimously.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion for immediate action for R122. There's a second from Councilor Benton. Councilors, we will go ahead. This needs to be a unanimous vote in order for us to hear it on Monday's meeting. Please take that into consideration. Go ahead, Mandy.
Counselor Benton, Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Grout,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
All right, great. So I'm going to pass that baton over to Councilor Davis for Monday's meeting now. Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item B. R123 is appropriating funds for operating the government of the City of Albuquerque for fiscal year 2024, beginning July 1st, 2023 and ending June 30th, 2024, adjusting fiscal year 2023 appropriations and appropriating capital funds. I move it do pass. There's a second from Councilor Feeblecorn. I would like to move committee substitute for R123. Is there a second? Second from Councilor Davis. Councilors, we're going to go ahead and take a vote on the committee substitute, and then we'll move on to amendments. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Benton. Counselor Benton, I don't believe your mic button is pushed.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Grout,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
and that passes unanimously.
All right, councilors, we're going to move on to amendments. We're going to start with Amendment A, which is a technical amendment for the admin's request. So I'm going to make a motion for a due pass of Amendment number 1 in your packet or on your iPads. Second from Councilor Feeblecorn. Is Mr. Davis the one, or or somebody from admin, the one that wants to go ahead and clarify the changes on this amendment, please? Ms. Yara, good evening.
Good evening, Councillor, Chair Bassan and councillors. Yes, we appreciate you sponsoring our technical amendment. And I do have Mr. Davis here to help me explain. We often have some last-minute changes that we just had. There were oversights or little mistakes that we made during the preparation of the budget, the proposed budget. So first of all, our amendment is a little lengthy. It does comprise 2 pages. However, let me go to the explanation. I'm sorry. So first of all, we're with this amendment, the Sustainability Division will formally move from Environmental Health over to General Services, where Ms. Rader currently resides, and that whole division will be in the right place. We are increasing non-recurring funding for the Family and Community Services Department by $355,000 to restore the appropriation for Warehouse 508, which was an oversight when we were preparing the proposed budget. They have gotten historic allocations of money from the council for their programs. We are increasing the Economic Development Department's budget by $200,000. This is for the payment of the gross receipts tax portion for the Top Golf project that we committed to in that agreement. That was an oversight. We forgot to include that here. The last 2 items that I mentioned will require additional money from the general fund. We have worked with Mr. Muniz to make that balance, and we do have those funds available, and we'll leave still some available fund balance for the council. The Office of Metropolitan Redevelopment is getting a bump of $150,000. This is actually offset by revenue coming in from Fund 275, the MR fund. This is to fund a partial salary for Mr. Bruner and some contractual items that were that went over. This is for fiscal year 23. The Aviation Department requested that their transfer to capital be increased, and we've done that here. They do have the available funds. They're just moving operating to capital, more than was requested before. Another big component here, you'll see $5 million coming off of Fund 201. That's the opioid abatement fund. This was actually a pure mistake on my part and my communication to the budget staff. This fund, as you know, is for the settlement funds that we receive from the opioid claims. We have to date only received $4.8 million, and those have already been appropriated by this council. This change just makes it a project life-to-date fund instead of a special revenue fund, which was the misunderstanding. And then DTI is switching some funding between FY23 and 24 for port switches that they need to buy for citywide use. I don't know what those are, but I'm sure they're very important. And then the transfer from Fund 220, this is the lodger's tax fund, into our debt service fund for the recent sponge bonds that this council issued for improvements at the convention center. That would be our first, basically paying off those bonds on July 1st. And then a request was made just by the MR agency that some funds that were allocated in FY23 for Route 66 and historic sign preservation be moved into the MR fund so that they can live their life to date and be used for the purpose and not revert this year. So stand for any other questions.
Thank you, Ms. Yara. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Yara, you may not know, but in the administration's amendment, item 14, mentions reducing community event dollars by 550,000 in order to transfer to MRA. Do you know, is that for specific events? Is that sort of the city generic pot that we use for just future contracts?
Yep, Madam Chair and Councillor Davis, that is actually the money for the historic sign rehab. It had originally been allocated to arts and culture in FY23.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Ms. Yara, I really appreciate it. Madam Chair, also Ms. Yara, I noticed that get it right, the Cannabis Services Manager, I know who it is, but I don't really know what they do. What does that person do?
Yes, actually, I mentioned this in the last CAL meeting. The Cannabis Services Manager is actually Isaac Padilla, but his role is not only cannabis policy. As you know, he works on state capital outlay, works with our legislators. So I mentioned, I think that the title he holds is a misnomer, and he'll be, that position will stay in Department of Finance.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
Counselor Benton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Yara, the first item, Warehouse 508, historically supported by council, I think were your words. And I appreciate the deference to the historic support of the council to many programs. I haven't heard much about what's going on at Warehouse 508 recently. So, you know, it's a nice big appropriation. Maybe before we vote on, you know, we can go ahead and pass this amendment tonight, but prior to voting on the final budget, I'd like some information about what's going on over there, what they've been doing. I mean, I know they've had their ups and downs, so Mr. Earl may have a comment.
Madam Chair and Councillor Benton, be happy to give you an update on that program for Monday's final passage, but the short of it is that they have moved to a new location on Central to expand their program, and the actual board itself that runs the program has entered into a rehabilitation agreement with a third party to expand the program on that site, and we'll give you some more details on what that means in terms of participants that will be provided services and in the future of the program.
Thank you, Mr. Earl. And then what's becoming of the old space?
Madam Chair and Councillor, at this point, that is a city-owned facility. We have, it's on the rail trail project, if you will. We are looking at the building itself to see if there's any city uses before we might consider putting it up for an opportunity for the private sector to perhaps repurpose the building moving forward.
And Madam Chair, if we were to do that, we would specify that it needs to be something complementary to the rail trail. Is that the concept, the idea? Or,
I would.
It's also an arts district there on First Street as well, of course.
Sure. Madam Chair and Councillor Benton, certainly that would be one of our priorities, is to ensure that it adds value to the program, et cetera, and that would be part of the conversation.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilors, any other questions? All right, Ms. Hinojos, if you'll please take a vote.
Counselor Benton.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Fevelkorn.
Yes.
Counselor Grout.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Lewis.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Counselor Basan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
We're going to move on to amendment number 2, otherwise amendment B in your packet. Counselor Davis.
Madam Chair, Amendment B, which I would move as Committee Amendment number 2. Committee Amendment number 2 essentially, it looks very complicated, but essentially what this does is it breaks out the allocations in each of the programs by personnel and operating dollars. Particularly in the last couple of years and over this last year, the council's engaged in quite a conversation with the administration about doing a better job for budgeting appropriately. And some of you have been here know that we've worked over years to sort of reduce the use of vacancy savings for operating costs without appropriation or authorization or approval of the council specifically. This amendment breaks out each of the programs into personnel and operating. And when read in conjunction with the budget ordinance that prohibits the transfer of funds between those items, line items in excess of $100,000 or 5% of the line item, it essentially does what we've asked, which is saying that we're going to leave personnel and personnel, operating and operating, and let the administration come back to give some public notice to the council if they want to do something different. So I would move amendment number 2.
Second.
We'll go ahead and take Counselor Grout second. Counselors, any questions? Administration, do you have any questions, comments?
Madam Chair and members of the council and Councilor Davis, this has been a longstanding conversation as it relates to how we budget in the city and how we break up costs, if you will, within programs. Separating the personnel piece into a separate line item within the program and then having the program dollars for other program-related expenses is very different than what we normally do in the programming, and I think this really does represent a very different way of approaching the budget, not what we've done before. I'm not so sure that we will have, I need to review this a little more, but we'll have more comment on Monday related to this. I get Councilor Davis's proposal. He's advocated this for some time. We'd like to see what the real impacts are going to be operationally. Thank you.
Counselor Davis?
If there's nothing else, Madam Chair, I'll use that as a close. But thank you. I think this council's made that clear. And I want to be clear, this isn't new. It's just more detail in the actual ordinance based on the data and the information provided by the administration and our staff and the budget staff throughout this process. And I applaud the finance office and the team, Mr. Bacta's team, for helping us to dial those in with each department over the last 2 years better. So I would urge your support, Madam Chair.
All right, Ms. Hinojos, if you'll take a vote, please.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Grout,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously.
Counselors, we'll move on to Amendment C in your packet or on your iPads, which will be Amendment number 3. Counselor Grout?
Madam Chair, thank you. Committee amendment number 3. On page 3, line 24, entitled Gibson Health Hub Operating, decrease the amount by $500,000. On page 2, line 28, entitled Capital Acquisition Fund, increase the amount by $500,000. The explanation for this amendment is transferring $500,000 from the 1.7 non-reoccurring appropriation titled Gateway Phase 1, the Engagement Center at Gibson Health Hub, and adding a non-recurring appropriation transfer to Capital Fund 305 for the East Gateway MRA. I move it to pass.
Counselors, there's a motion, and Counselor Jones with a second. Any questions or comments?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Real?
Madam Chair, so as we are looking at these particular amendments, I'd like to ask, Madam Chair, there is in the committee substitute a decrease in the funding for Gateway. Is this, as I read this amendment, this would be added to that decrease, if you will. Is that accurate?
Mr. Real, I'm going to go ahead and go to Mr. Muniz on confirming that. I believe it is, but I would like to confirm that with our staff, as this is not my amendment.
Madam Chair, that is correct. So we did reduce 1.5 million in the committee sub for Gibson Health Hub. This amendment reduces Gibson further by that amount. So yeah, it's in combination of both.
Mr. Real?
Madam President and councilors, I would say, as we've said before, we've worked really well with the committee substitute and with you, Madam Chair, as it relates to trying to look at the realistic perspective of where we are with the Gibson Health Hub. it is going to be a real challenge operationally and on the capital side to finish this project. We are hopeful to finish the medical respite portion and the sobering portion in this next fiscal year. Taking additional funding from the construction project just delays the project even more so. So we would not support this amendment and would ask the council to support the administration in trying to get that facility open in the next year. And this does impact the capital side of the program for that project.
Mr. Muniz, I do want to clarify something. So if it's reducing this from the Gibson Health Hub operating line, that's doing a one-time reduction in recurring funding, am I correct?
Madam Chair, the amendment is reducing the non-recurring listed of Gateway Phase 1 and Engagement Center at Gibson Health Hub. So that amount was $1.7 million in non-recurring funds. And so we selected the Gibson Health Hub operating line item, assuming that that's where this money was placed. I mean, it could be that we just selected the wrong program, but based on the assumption that it was Gibson, that's the program we selected.
So I guess I just want to clarify that it's non-recurring funding being moved for other non-recurring. It's not recurring to non-recurring.
Madam Chair, that is correct. It is taking from non-recurring funding.
Okay,
yes.
thank you. Councilor Benton?
Yeah, I just want to explain my vote. I can't support this. You know, the Gibson Health Hub, we've had our very eagle eyes of all 9 of us on that project for a long time now. You know, this as much as I support the Councilor Grout's redevelopment area, and I totally support metropolitan redevelopment, and that's a very legitimate one on East Central. I can't support it coming from this funding. We've got to get the health hub open, and we've got to open it in a strong way, not with our hands tied. So I cannot support the amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilors, any other comments? Councilor Grout to close? Oh, I'm sorry, hang on, Councilor Grout. Mr. Muniz?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just speaking with the administration, if this amendment passes, we will have to include an additional line. So we indicated that we will be transferring it to Fund 305 if it passes. We also have to appropriate those funds in Fund 305, and that was missing in the amendment. That was just an oversight. So if this amendment does pass, we'll work with the administration on making sure that that third line gets input into the amendment.
Is that something, Mr. Muniz, that you can add the third line if Councilor Grout is good with that?
It is something that we can add, Madam Chair, yes.
Councilor
I'm
Grout,
good with
did you
that.
hear and understand that?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do, and I am good with that. Thank you.
So,
I urge your support. I do, Madam Chair, I do understand, and I respectfully ask that we do pass this. And I urge
Okay.
your support.
okay. I think that was a close. Thank you. Okay. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Benton,
No.
Counselor Davis,
No.
Counselor Fubelkorn,
No.
Counselor Grout,
Yes,
Counselor Jones,
No.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
No.
That fails on a 4-5 vote.
All right, councilors, we're going to be moving on to Amendment D, Amendment number 4. Counselor Sanchez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're looking at Amendment D on page 2, line 29, entitled Operating Grant Funds. Decrease the amount by $300,000. On page 3, line 4, entitled Council Services, increase the amount by $300,000. The explanation is this amendment is reducing the amount transferred to the operating grant funds 265 by $300,000 and increasing council services budget by $300,000. The purpose is to continue and expand the council-initiated policy priority-based budgeting pilot program as noted at R22-18. The program would continue with the public safety departments and expand to additional departments. one of the things that I've noted is I really would like all the counselors to sit down with Mr. Muniz so that he could actually show the value to this governing body as to how accurate and how detailed this is. We can actually see every single detail of every single program and operation within the city government. We can see it based on how much that individual gets paid. You can tell how many people are assigned. You can see it in great detail. This will also help us to determine, as a governing body, determine if this project is needed or not. If the project is definitely needed, then we would fund it more. It gives us that kind of detail. If the project is not needed, then we would talk to the director and ask the director to make some adjustments to make sure that this project is headed in the right direction. And if it's not, then we probably would be able to come to a honest conclusion between both sides and determine whether to scrap that item or not. So it's a very, very, very good program, and I urge your support. Thank you.
Councilors, questions? Councilor Benton.
Yes, I'll ask the sponsor, Councilor Sanchez. So, understood exactly what you're driving at. How would that money be spent, though, within council services?
I could leave that to Mr. Muniz, I'm sorry.
Mr. Muniz.
Madam Chair, Councilor Sanchez, Councilor Benton. So the money would go towards, it's coming out of our office. It's kind of initiating the pilot program. We currently have an agreement with the vendor now for the pilot project going on. What this does is it continues the program with the public safety departments and just extends the contract for another year with the inclusion of at least 5 other departments that we could decide upon at a later date. So that's where the money would go towards. It would be for licensing of the system itself.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Councilor Sanchez.
Just to follow up on Councilor Benton's idea, what we're really looking at is being able to see these items, these line items. If you look at the budget now, you just see 5 or 6 or 7 line items. For example, the police department. If you click on those will break down just like if you got on any website, and then you can see every single program that's on that department, and you can see how much money is being spent on that department. I really encourage everybody to really take a look at it because it's a definite deep dive and a microscopic look at everyone's department and what's going on. And I think it's important for all of us, not just city council driving something over on the administration. I think the administration will look at this as well with open eyes and say, hey, that program isn't working, or let's get together and figure out how we can make it work. And so that's the purpose of priority-based budgeting here, is to make sure that we can be more transparent and make sure that we give the citizens of Albuquerque the best bang for their buck. Thank you.
Councilor Pena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. I know Mr. Muniz tried this last year, and it's really in-depth, and I think it's a lot of good information. My questions were to him, and I guess to the administration, is that, when we use different software, sometimes they don't communicate with each other. And I'm of the understanding that sometimes we'll ask for some information budgetary-wise, and we'll get different information from City Council and then different information from the administration. And according to the charter says that all the budgetary information needs to be shared with City Council. So I don't know where the gap in that analysis is. So I feel like, I think what Jesse's doing is great. I really appreciate all the effort and time he's put into it. But I just am a little fearful sometimes that we're creating another budget that maybe doesn't align with our current budget, and I'm not sure whether they communicate with each other. And, so if the administration can maybe answer some of those questions, I would appreciate it.
Mr. Baca.
Madam Chair, may I? Thank you. So conceptually, I think this is a great idea, but I also want to point out that the process we have right now, whether we are using this software or not, it is a priority-based budgeting, we do have the hearings, we do have program evaluations, and I think having a different software than what we are trying to implement right now, which is Questica, it would be redundant. We will be entering information twice. I believe that the council has the full access to the Questica that we are trying to implement, and we will be happy to expand the scope of that software, which would do exactly the same thing that Councilor Sanchez, you are trying to achieve. And we already have some technical challenges in implementing this program, but I would like Mr. Lawrence Davis to expand on the challenges and why we think this would be redundant.
Mr. Davis?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Councilor Pena. And like Sanjay is saying, I do think we are performing priority-based budgeting all the way from the IPC, developing the 8 goals, all the way to the 5-year goals, 1-year priority objectives. And that's all captured in our current database, Hyperion, which is going to transfer to Questica, which also comes with additional functionality. I believe City Council does have access to Hyperion, full access to Hyperion, to pull all the data that we have access to. We input it. Council does have access to it, and they will have full access to Questica as well. And there's additional functionality, exactly like you're saying, Councilor Sanchez, in Questica, that's actually going to be outward facing to the public, where they could drill down and say, okay, I want to go drill down into APD's budget. Okay, how many officers are in neighborhood policing? If we have a Southwest Area Command and we have a department ID, they could start drilling down into personnel, operating, contractual services, and that's the power of Questica, our new budget system that Hyperion doesn't have. But it will be a redundant system on top of the one we do have now.
Madam Chair.
Before we get there, we have a couple other counselors before you, and then we'll make sure to come back to you, Councilor Sanchez. Councilor Pena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you said council we have access now to Hyperion, so that's accurate. And then, so Questica, you said council will have access. So are you transitioning to that platform? Is that what you're doing?
Madam Chair and Councilor Pena, yes. We will be performing a fiscal year 25 budget in Questica. We're finishing up fiscal year 24 budget in Hyperion, and we'll transition as soon as we're in the implementation phase and user acceptance training at this point. So we will be providing access to all departments and City Council, probably I would say July, when we finish user acceptance training.
So Madam Chair, so can our fiscal manager have access to, so that he can be learning the process side by side? And then obviously he's taken a deeper dive in a way, just in relation to the modules, right? Obviously he's talking about different modules. Do you have any intent within this budget to purchase those additional modules to do what he's asking?
And Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, the additional functionality that Questica brings, it does have a performance measurement module, and it does have a capital module. So our CIP folks in DMD are also looking at that. So it has the ability to wrap everything into one. And Mr. Muniz and I have talked, and the system that you're currently exploring does interact with Questica. And as a matter of fact, Questica does produce some reports that would interact with priority-based budgeting. But the performance measure component, we haven't delved into, but it's pretty comprehensive from what Questica, what they've demonstrated for us.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Mr. Muniz, so can you tell me why, why the difference and why it's needed to have two different softwares?
Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, I think the conversation that we've had over the last 2 or 3 years, especially based on Amendment Number 2 that we've passed, the conversation that we've had is the City Council has always felt the need that they're not getting a full understanding of what makes up the budget. And so we are looking for other ways to explore on how to get that information to City Council. As you're aware, during our, as well as the administration's aware, we send out quite a number of questions every year when the budget comes across, because we're trying to understand, what services and programs we're offering in the city and how those programs are being effective. And so the idea behind it is, one, if you have a system like this that describes all the programs and services that the city offers, now we have an idea of what they are. Two, we can start asking a little bit more detailed questions on whether or not these programs and services are working. I would like to say that although it does sound redundant and it may sound as that such, the prime example that we've been using is the city of Pittsburgh, who uses both Questica and this tool that we are testing now. So they perform all their budgetary activities in the Questica system. Information gets uploaded into the ResourceX system, and then the legislative body then evaluates the information that comes from the ResourceX system. So they do work hand in hand. I like to view Questica system as more of an accounting line item type budget system. It does have programs, yes, it does have department IDs. We see that now in Hyperion. The thing that we've been able to do with great help with the departments that were part of this pilot project was to get a deeper dive into what services that they provide to the city. And so, for example, we may have a neighborhood policing program strategy with a Southeast Heights or area command. That's as far as down as we go in our current system. What they were able to help us figure out is what actually does occur in that area command. And so we went down a deeper level, and they helped us allocate costs, both contractual and personnel. And so they did a really good job of kind of helping us out, figure out what they look like. And so, again, knowing that information, we can now see, okay, we know what services that the department is offering, and we can understand better that the programming being offered, and we can start asking questions. Is it doing well? Is it not doing well? So it's another tool for council to get just a better understanding of how this budget operates. And so, yes, we do have Hyperion access. We will have Questica access, but I will say there are other communities that are using both, and they're using it successfully.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Counselor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Councilor Pena. You dug in exactly what I was going to jump into about us already being in the middle of a transition. I'm not opposed to this. I think if it's a tool that we can use and the public can use and the council can use, it might be a good idea. I just wonder if, given that transition and the sort of late moment of getting the amendments out today, I wonder if this might be best served as an amendment to be handled on Monday, so there could be some more conversation about how those might interact. I realize it's just a big ticket item, but more detail, obviously, the better. But I just want to be sure to answer some of those questions and be sure the sponsor and staff and everybody are sort of on the same page about where that might go. But again, I defer that to the sponsor or how they want to manage it. But we do have a second bite at this apple on Monday, and it sounds like this might be better with a little better conversation on a technical level.
Counselor Feeblecorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councilor Davis. I just have a couple questions. Number one, how much have we spent on the priority-based budgeting already? I know we allocated some funds for that last year.
Madam Chair, Councilor Feeblecorn, we utilized $150,000 last year for this, and that money came from ARPA. One of the uses of ARPA was to identify programs to bring data to cities and communities, and so we utilized funding from ARPA to test out a pilot program to see how well this would work for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So did we buy the software with that $150,000?
Madam Chair, Councilor Feeblecorn, yes, it's a license, just like any other subscription. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Madam Chair, thank you. So this is double that. Are we just using the software more for $300,000? I'm just trying to understand where the money's going.
Madam Chair, Councilor Feeblecorn, yes, we'd be using the software more, and you would be adding additional departments. And so kind of the pricing structure is based on the size of a municipality's budget and the number of departments that they have in their city. And so this pricing is based on just that, the size of our city budget compared to the number of departments, and it's kind of a department by department cost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One more question, please. And can you give me a little more information on the $300,000 that's coming from operating grants fund? What are we giving up for that $300,000 out of that fund?
Madam Chair, Councilor Feeblecorn, so it was just trying to find some areas where money could be pulled from to try to fund this, and speaking with the administration on what the grant fund's $6 million was. Is our understanding that the amount came from just a 5-year average of the use of those funds, and so it averaged about $5.7 million over a 5-year period, and so we just kind of took that number and said, okay, we'll go to 5.7 versus 6 million.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Administration, do you agree? Is that true? Is that just an average from the last several years, or do we know?
Madam Chair, Councilor Feeblecorn, I would have to get back to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, Counselor Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We need to remember when we actually implemented priority-based budgeting as counselors, this was something that we thought was very important to the legislative side as counselors to make sure that we have since we have the responsibility over the money. So it'd be nice to make sure that we know the system back and forth. It's very important that we know the system back and forth. And with this system, we'll be able to see that. If you recall, when this came, the administration did not want anything to do with priority-based budgeting. I actually think that this conversation right now could be kind of a nice ploy to make sure that we don't fund it anymore for that very reason. So I think it's really important that we look as counselors to do the responsible thing and continue this and move this project forward so that we can have the very, very deep dive look that we need as a legislative branch to do our job. And I just think it's our responsibility to make sure that we spend the public's money in the right way. So if we continue to stay with a system that we don't, or we see on one side and then have another one, as long as they talk to each other, we're still getting the same information. And I think we're getting the accurate information across the board. What we're looking for is that deep dive and that look as deep as we can into the way the system's working. And I think it's our responsibility as counselors to make sure that we have something that we voted on previously that we have shown will work. Again, I just asked our counselors to really, really take a good look at it because it does show the exact items that we need to see as counselors. Thank you.
Counselor Sanchez, okay, I'm happy that you all want to say something more because I didn't want that to be a close because I wanted to ask another question based off of what you said. So I just want to clarify, you had said, Counselor, that as long as these two, it sounds to me, first of all, like we might have 3 different budgeting programs right now. If we're in the implementation phase of one, and then we have a portion of priority-based budgeting, and then we have our traditional budgeting, which is extremely uncomfortable to me, that we have 3 different budget potentials. But you had mentioned just now in what you said that as long as they talk to each other, then it's okay. Are they talking to each other?
Yes, Mr. Muniz said that they do talk to each other. So one of the things that's really important is that if we have the budget and we know what's going on, then we can open up our side, look at it, get that deep dive. If there's something the administration's missing, then we can ask for that item to be filled in. The administration has been good with it. I mean, when I look at the priority-based budgeting that we went over yesterday, the pilot project, it shows in great detail all the way down. And I think that, and this is my personal opinion, and I don't know if this is correct or not, but the reason why we're looking at 3 budgets right now, we didn't have 3 budgets when we passed this in the first place. So there was only one way to do it, and we introduced the priority-based budgeting, and now all of a sudden, now we have a 3rd budget system. So what I'm looking at, and this my opinion, is I think that since we came up with the priority-based budgeting, now all of a sudden it's like, let's throw a wrench into this and get rid of it. So now we have 3 to confuse things more. So in my opinion, I think it's a way for the administration to make sure that us as city councilors aren't really getting that deep dive that we really, really need. So I think we need to stay on the path that we all agreed on and continue forward with what we decided in the first place. Thank you.
Ms. Yara, Mr. Davis, I don't know if it's one or both of you that wanted to say something.
Yes, Madam Chair and councilors, I just want to clear up a few things and mention some other information. So first of all, I appreciate Mr. Muniz's efforts in trying to get more information in a different way to the council. I do agree that we probably need to improve the process of establishing our priorities and communicating those both to the administration and the council. I want to mention that the Questica system cost us $415,000 to purchase and $187,000 for the next 5 years for maintenance, so for comparison. The second thing I want to say is that the priority-based budgeting system that's provided by ResourceX is not a third budget system. It's an auxiliary module that talks to either Hyperion or Questica, and just lets Mr. Muniz and the counselors group different information in a different way. So I would disagree that it's a separate system. We don't have 3 budgets. We only have 1 proposed budget that you guys received. My other concern is that the department staff, the fiscal staff mostly, are very burdened, first of all, with just our regular budget development process. They are highly involved with the issue papers and everything leading up to us submitting a proposed budget. And Mr. Muniz was very cooperative with us. This year, we did not have time or staff resources to help with that effort. However, I did get a lot of feedback from the departments that were involved in the pilot project, and they were just highly confused about what we're being asked to have them enter, and if it's coming from the administration, and which is a priority. Is it the normal budget development information they have to focus on, or the priority-based budgeting information for council? So it got a little bit muddled. The last thing I want to say, and this is, I think, I'm going to just say that this is my personal opinion. In order to really tackle the issue of priority-based budgeting and coming up with those priorities that are satisfactory to both the administration and the council, I urge you to look at the budget ordinance and see what's in there and talk about what changes can be made that everybody can agree on as to how we come up with these priorities. I feel like we've been spinning our wheels, and the IPC and the Goals Forum is a great process, but it's also very antiquated, and I think it needs some changing. So I would urge the counselors, all of you, to look at that budget ordinance and see what improvements could be made there. Thank you.
Councilor Lewis.
Thank you. I would absolutely agree with that. I think that document is antiquated and not very helpful, and the process that we've gone through over the years to develop that, I think, has been so where it's meaningless now. So I do believe we need to do that. But I do think I guess the comments related to the staff and the staff's time and the staff's resources, and then also just the staff being confused by it. I do want to give Mr. Muniz a chance to respond to that. But it would seem to me that certainly there would be some confusion if we weren't together on that, if the council and the administration wasn't together on that, if they were hearing different things from the administration than they are from the council. And the council sent a pretty clear message last year that we wanted to pilot this program, this priority-based program. And so so I think that's pretty clear. I think the question then is has the administration fully bought into it? And if you've not bought into it, I mean, what is it going to take to be able to do that? Because the idea of priority-based budgeting is not going to go away, among this council. So there's going to be confusion among the staff if there's still the, 2 different, I guess, outlooks on it. So what I would challenge the administration to do is to fully embrace it and fully embrace working with the council staff, and so that the staff is not confused over it. And if we're short on staff or resources or time, then please propose in the budget just more resources and more staff and within your budget. I think, Ms. Yara, we'd be glad to look at being able to fund more resources for that, and certainly to our own staff to be able to come alongside you all and make sure that it's a cohesive effort on that.
Councilor Sanchez to close.
Thank you. Just wanted to see, Mr. Muniz, can you give us a little more detail in reference to where that money's coming from, just to kind of clear everything up, just to make sure that we're not hurting something that is very, very, very important this time?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, Councilor Sanchez. Yeah, I can work with, rework with the administration on this again. Again, When asked about the transfer of operating grants fund as part of the budget and the questions that we had, we worked together and indicated that, again, the average over the last 5 years of use of operating grants was about $5.7 million. So that's where the number comes from, the 300,000 that we reduced it to leave it at 5.7. My understanding and speaking with the administration is that that amount varies year to year, and so that's why we took an average over the last 5 years for that. So that's the justification of the amount that came from.
It's just, what I'm trying to find out is just to make sure that, you know, that we can get the support that we need. So I'm just trying to figure out how we can, you know, determine if we're not hurting something else. So you're saying that it was how much? How many million? 5 point?
Madam Chair, Councilor Sanchez, yes, the number, when we asked about it, the average over the last 5 years was 5.7 million. This year's budget is transferring 6 million, and so we just took the difference.
Okay, thank you. So it doesn't sound like it's making it less. We just took the difference because we have more now in there than we did before. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Councilor Sanchez, I mean, I would leave it up to the administration to answer that question, but again, I'm going based off the number that we kind of got to.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and Councilor Sanchez, the numbers that Mr. Muniz provided to you are accurate. I gave him those numbers. I'm not as concerned about where the funding's coming from. The operating grants fund transfer it fluctuates based on the amount of grants we receive over the course of the year. It's the other side that I'm more concerned about. Thanks.
Okay, Counselor Feeblecorn, we're going to go one more time, and then we're really going to do a close. Counselor Feeblecorn.
Sorry, Madam Chair, thank you. So I heard that, but I am concerned. We have a lot of grants coming into the city over the next couple of years with the Inflation Reduction Act and with the infrastructure funding. And so I just want to make sure that as that money's coming in, a lot of it is, you know, match-free. It's a really once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we're not doing anything here that would lower our ability to accept those funds and use those funds. So that's what I'm trying to understand, and I don't know if anyone can help me with that answer.
Mr. Davis.
Madam Chair and Councilor Feeblecorn, that's exactly what would happen, is it lowers our ability, the amount of money we push in there allows us for the match in IDOH. So the less we push into the operating grants fund, the less we have available for match in IDOH. Last year we spent $6.5 million. The average is $5.7 million. Fiscal year 22 actuals was $6.5 million. Again, it's an estimate every year that we work with, and Mr. Muniz is right. It was 5.7 historical average, but it will impact our ability, no matter how much we take out of there, how much we put in, and how much is there for the grants management team to match for IDOH and capital. Or grants, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Counselor Sanchez, a real quick close. We've gone around a couple times. So
Yes, I appreciate
close
it.
on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the time. I just want to just really quickly say that we've all had issues where we've actually asked the administration for certain things, and and we haven't got the information back. So what we're looking at here, it's all about transparency, 100%. And so I just ask for your support about transparency. Thank you.
Ms. Hinojos.
Counselor, did we get a second on this motion?
Yes, Counselor Grout.
Thank you. Counselor Benton?
No.
Counselor Davis?
No. Excuse me, no.
Counselor Feeblecorn?
No.
Counselor Grout?
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Lewis?
Yes.
Counselor Pena?
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez?
Yes.
Counselor Basan?
No.
That passes on a 5-4 vote.
Counselors, we're going to move on to Amendment E, which will be Amendment number 5. Counselor Feeblecorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe with the technical cleanup bill, or the technical cleanup amendment that we did first, that this is no longer necessary. But I would love to just make sure that I am understanding that giant amendment that came first that I saw 4 seconds before we started.
Mr. Cornelius, this is where you need Jeopardy music, even though I really would hope that we don't hardly ever use it.
So, Madam Chair, I'll just fill in while they're talking. So what I was trying to do here was make sure that there were some funds allocated to Prosperity Works that is going to be used on some environmental work, but it was still in the budget under the Environmental Health Department, but our Sustainability Office moved over to GSD, so I was just trying to make sure that that money moved with them, but I think that it might have been handled in the big cleanup amendment, so that's what they're talking about right now.
Mr. Rayo?
Madam Chair, just for purposes of expedition, if you will, let's just pass the amendment, and if it's been taken care of, we'll clean it up on Monday.
Is that the will of the chair? I'm happy to do whatever you want.
That's fine with me.
Okay, thank you. So that's it. I'm just trying to make sure that the money that is allocated to Prosperity Works moves along with Prosperity Works over to the new home of the Sustainability Office. And with that, I'll move amendment number 5.
There's a second from Counselor Davis. Counselors, any questions or comments? Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Sure.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Grout,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
And that passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to Amendment F. This is number 6. On page 5, line 15, entitled Office of Inspector General, decrease the amount by $30,000. And on page 5, line 17, entitled Internal Audit, increase the amount by $30,000. The reason for this is because, we put, in the committee sub, I put $65,000 for contract legal counsel in case there was a necessary point in time in the next fiscal year that either the IG, IA, or AGO would need some outside legal counsel. But instead of leaving it in just one department, we ended up splitting it in half-ish. But it still would be available for both IA, IG, and AGO. There's a second from Counselor Feeblecorn. Counselors, any questions? Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Grout,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
And that passes unanimously.
Moving on to Amendment G, or number 7, Counselor Jones, Grout, and Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam President. This is, the amendment reduces recurring expenditures from the Administrative Support Program in ACS and increases the internal audit and Inspector General's office for purpose of providing a salary increase for the IA and the IG. A salary adjustment of $62,805 for the IG and $58,079 for the IA was recommended by the Accountability and Government Oversight Committee. I move a do pass.
Second.
Second.
There is a motion in a couple seconds. Counselors, questions? Counselor Davis?
And then I may ask, I'm sure for the administration to comment, but can someone remind me what the current salaries are for those positions? I just didn't see it in our book and I don't recall.
Mr. Muniz, do you have that?
Or Mr. Bakta, if you know.
Or Mr. Davis?
Chair, Counselor Davis, off the top of my head, I believe the IA is 54, I'm gonna ballpark it, 5450, and the IG is 5250, about 53. Muniz, I could,
Like, Mr. Davis, that can't be right. What's the, they don't make,
okay,
they make more than 54,000.
I was 3 cents off, Madam Chair.
Per hourly, right, but what's the, I'm sorry, yeah.
Oh,
Times 2080, what's that?
Times 2080. So the IG is 113,422.
That's
I8 and IG is 110,240.
Thank you.
Counselors, any additional questions, comments? I do have one comment. So I was originally going to do my best to increase some of this as well in the committee substitute. However, there were some dialogues going back and forth regarding us being able to administer or give some suggestions as to salaries within departments. And although I do think that these two positions, in addition to many more in the city, do deserve the right and they do earn more than we pay them. We are working on this class and comp study that I swear I might actually hold up on a pedestal someday because I think that we're really putting our everything into it. And I think rightfully so, but I did change the objectives that we have in order to say that we should prioritize the planners in the planning department, the assistant planners in the planning department, the IG and the IA's office in order to get an evaluation of those three entities in particular for whether or not a raise is warranted and how much. And so with that, I am going to stick by what I've promised and that evaluation and where I landed with it, and I'm going to wait until the class and comp study comes out. So with that, Councilor Pena.
I just want to say, yeah, I agreed with kind of the changes that you had made in the floor sub, just because, I mean, I'm kind of a little bit uncomfortable just knowing that we're not supposed to be getting involved in this stuff, and, here we're just going to kind of just arbitrarily give a raise, which they may deserve or not deserve, I don't know, but, I've had a lot of the unions and people come to me, and, we can't get involved in their negotiations, we can't just give them a certain amount of money. So I'm not sure, and maybe there's someone from legal here who can answer that or talk about that, but, I'm supportive if they're not getting paid, but I'm supportive of lots of the bargaining units that we have out there that are not getting paid rightfully as well. So I don't know if there's anyone here who can kind of talk to that.
Councilor Pena, I
Should it
see
be our role?
Ms. Keith here, if you want to hear from her.
Should it be our role to do that? Because it feels as though these two positions are the only two in the whole city of Albuquerque that we can actually just say an amount.
Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, I actually don't know the answer to that. I can look that up while you're discussing other matters. I do know Ms. Sanestevan is here. She might know the answer. But my understanding is that their salaries are supposed to be set by the AGO. So I would have to look up whether this council could then add money to that.
And Councilor, I know that Mr. Melendez is online as well, I believe, if you want to see if he has the answer.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't. Hi.
Hi, Madam Chair, Councilor Pena. You're exactly right. The City Council has charter-based limitations on your ability to be directly involved in employment, compensation setting, or other direct employment matters. But as I read this amendment, what it is doing is appropriating money which would effectively make it available for that purpose. So in the event that the AGO has a current recommendation or is going to make a future recommendation within the next fiscal year, that an amount of compensation increase would be appropriate for one or both of those positions, this amount would go to fund that. However, appropriating this money does not mean that on July 1st, those positions would be increased by this amount. It just makes that money available for appropriation in the event that those salaries are adjusted through the appropriate methods.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair and Councilor Pena, I would be comfortable with that interpretation that would not usurp the authority of the AGO.
Councilor Pena?
Okay, Madam Chair. So my question is that usually the way we appropriate is based on a recommendation that comes down, not necessarily just making just a general amount. Is that accurate, or am I I'm just not used to this situation?
Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, that is accurate, and it is slightly oddly postured, but these are the two independent agencies within the city whose compensation is set differently than almost anybody else, and that they don't have a supervisor or a direct report that sets their compensation. And so to the extent that their budget has limitations in it that the AGO may not feel that they have flexibility within to make a salary increase recommendation, this is different, but I don't think that it's inappropriate based on its difference.
Thank you.
Counselor Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. This amendment reduces, I'm going to give you the explanation in case nobody read it, which it seems is what happened. This amendment reduces recurring expenditures from the Administrative Support Program in ACS and increases the Internal Audit, IA, and Inspector General's office for the purpose of providing a salary increase for the IA and IG. A salary adjustment of $62,805 for the IGA and $58,079 for the IA was recommended by the Accountability and Government Oversight Committee. Obviously, we went in for less, and we think that they deserve this, plus the recommendation from the AGO. Thank you.
Counselor Benton.
I'd like to hear from ACS about this.
Counselor Benton, you went, Director?
If that's all right, Madam Chair. Yes.
No, absolutely. Director, welcome.
What would be the implications, Director?
There probably won't be a huge implication. I mean, it definitely takes away funding that's reoccurring that we could definitely use for, if I don't know if it was going to come out of the strategic support, so it probably vendors and partners. But we also stand with any adjustments that need to happen. We are big on making sure people are paid accordingly. So I understand that very well. So I will say, Councilor Benton, Madam Chair, we support whatever the administration feels is right. I will say, if this is something that would take longer than another quarter or two, this is where my personal recommendation might be, as I've done in the past, is a mid-year adjustment to maybe figure out what that might look like. But again, that was just from past experience in myself, and that's something that obviously our budget team could give more understanding. But again, not something that I'm an expert in, so.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Counselor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The increase that we're recommending only increases the positions by $20K each, not the recommended amount by the AGO. And AGO requested this raise for both positions. Therefore, I will once again say I support this resolution and ask your support.
Mr. Baca.
Madam Chair, thank you. I think it's not a funding issue, but we do have a conceptual issue with this. This recommendation was based on self-study done by the IG and IA. And I have also spoken to some AGO members. They would like to evaluate this and compare salaries to similar positions in New Mexico on their own, rather than depending on IG and IA to do that study, because that seems to be not independent. Also, we just agreed with your change in the performance measure, and the HR department, when they begin the contract with the vendor to do the class and comp study, these positions and other positions in those offices will be the first one to be evaluated, and they will make the recommendations, and that's something you just passed minutes ago. So, and then we have 6,000 plus employees, as Councilor Pena mentioned. A lot of positions needs to be evaluated, and salaries adjustments will be made. So I believe this is almost like putting the cart ahead of the horse. We just agreed to something. We should consider waiting for that study to be completed, and then whatever the recommendation, we implement that. And that's what we recommend. Thank you.
Counselor Pena.
Just one more question. So you're saying, Mr. Bacta, that they came up with the salary increase themselves?
Madam Chair and Councilor Pena, the AGO's recommendation is based on study conducted by IG and IA.
So I guess, Madam Chair, so then this would be to Mr. Melendez. How can we, achieve what is trying to occur, but if there wasn't independency from, either independent from us, but independency from them of creating the salary, could we do an objective that would say, hey, by July 1, we have to have an independent person, independent of us and independent of them to actually determine this, if that was accurate?
Councilor Pena, so kind of tying on to what Mr. Bacta was just saying, as you know, Councilor Bassan has a bill that will be before you on Monday at your May 15th meeting of the City Council related to some changes with the AGO and IG ordinances. And those bills do have language in them, or will have language in them, related to how compensation is set for the both of those positions, the IG and the IA. So again, assuming that that bill gets some amount of finality between now and July 1st, then that would set the process through which those positions can get compensation increases. And to the extent that that process is followed and it recommends that a compensation increase is appropriate, then this would be the money that would fund that compensation increase. So I think there is a way to reconcile this with what is being proposed. The fact that the AGO did make a salary increase recommendation and that it has not been implemented to date, I think speaks to the issue that needs to be resolved there with respect to how that salary is set and with respect to where that money might come from.
So I would just, I'd like to make a motion just to defer it till our Monday meeting so we can get a little bit more clarity, and so I don't know.
Okay, there's a motion and a second.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
a deferral of the amendment would not be possible, unfortunately, because the bill will come out of committee either amended or not. And so if there's opposition to the amendment or more questions at this time, then, it's at the discretion of the sponsors to withdraw the amendment and represent it on Monday. Otherwise, it would need to be voted on and is not possible to defer just the amendment.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so I go to the sponsors to either close or decide. And I don't know if Councilor Grout, is she back? She's back. Councilor Grout, do you have anything to add?
I don't. I'd be happy with pulling it if the other sponsors, co-sponsors want to, and then we can discuss it further on Monday, introduce it then.
I'm good with that as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
As am I. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to withdraw that. And Councilor Benton, I think you were the second on that one. Or was it Councilor Grout? Okay.
I think I was. And I'm good with it.
Okay, so we're going to move on. We're going to move on to Amendment H, which will be number 8. Councilor Feeblecorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move amendment number 8 on page 2 after line 7, insert the following. $40,000 originally appropriated to Animal Protection of New Mexico as a non-recurring item is now reserved to NM Dog for $20,000 and $20,000 to Animal Protection of New Mexico for the wildlife program. This is just cleanup. There were 2 really good programs that were working, one on wildlife coexistence campaign and one on working on reducing the number of animals coming into our shelter, and I wanted to make sure that those were both maintained for the following year.
Is there a second? There's a second from Councilor Benton. Councilors, questions or comments? Councilor Grout, did you have something to add?
I do not.
Okay. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Grout,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
All right, we'll move on. Amendment I is number 9. Counselor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment, amendment number 9, makes about $1 million contingent of appropriation from the Lodgers Tax Fund later this year if excess revenues overestimated for improvements needed at the Isotope Stadium to comply with Major League Baseball requirements. I'll explain it and then make a motion if that's okay with the chair. Madam Chair, some of the council may know over the last several years, we've been slowly making improvements to the stadium to meet upgraded requirements for Major League Baseball in order to have a stadium that complies with their rules. Some of the cool new things we get to do are to make locker rooms for women because we have umpires and other people participating in formal roles. For there, also enhancements to the player activity facilities, et cetera. Over the last several years, our revenue from the stadium has increased because of United activity, United leases and their activity and other things. And so we expect that there will be money here. This council put about $1.4 million in the CIP that would be available next summer, but there are some improvements that need to be done at the conclusion of this year in order to maintain our compliance with MLB rules that over the next several years we upgrade our stadium. This is just a way for us to set that aside, show our commitment to continuing to keep the best baseball stadium in the Major League Baseball, and I appreciate Mr. Real and the administration's support. I move Amendment 9.
There's a motion and a second from Counselor Feeblecorn. Counselors, questions? Counselor Benton.
Is that a question for whomever knows the answer? How are excess Lodgers Tax Fund revenues normally dealt with? As just by a straight division between the various agencies?
Madam Chair and Councilor Benton, as far as the 50% which goes to the marketing, we do have a current contract where we give certain percentage. So out of 50%, 42% goes to Visit Albuquerque. That contract was approved during the pandemic because those revenues are highly fluctuated, and it continues to be that way. So that is the 50% on the marketing side. As far as the capital, we do have some debt, and we have sufficient revenue coming in to pay off the debt, and the excess revenue gets accumulated, and when it reaches certain amount, we do the sponge bond and identify the issues that we need to work on. And for example, last time we issued the sponge bond, it was roughly $3 million, and we used it for the roof and other needs at the convention center. So this amendment basically would put the money aside, and once we reach certain amount, when it makes sense to issue the sponge bond, because the sponge bond also has some cost associated with that. So we don't want to issue a sponge bond for $100,000 per se. So once we have enough amount, we will issue the sponge bond and use it for stadium. That's the goal. But we cannot use the money directly. We have to issue the sponge bond, and that allows us to use that money for capital improvement related to tourism. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Madam.
Counselors, any other questions? Counselor Pena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is from the lodger's tax, or is this, I'm trying to understand, this is from fund balance. So what's, I think it's the same, different?
Madam Chair and Councilor Pena, it is both. So we do have some accumulated money. It is not enough that we would issue the sponge bond right now, but we will continue to accumulate the money, and once we have enough, we will issue the sponge bond.
Okay, thank you.
Counselors, any other questions or comments? All right, so Counselor Davis to close.
Urge your support.
Ms. Hinojos.
Counselor Benton.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn.
Yes.
Counselor Grout.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Lewis.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Counselors, Amendment J is number 10. Counselor Grout and Sanchez.
Counselor Grout, would you like to go first?
Sure, sure. This amendment 10 is, this amendment is to reduce the amount allocated for the Gibson Health Hub operating by $300,000 and increase the homeless support services budget by $300,000. The purpose is to continue the Job Connect program pending a successful pilot program. It's our understanding that this program is going well, and we want it to continue. Again, this money will be there pending the successful pilot program report.
That's a motion
And I move do pass.
Okay, a
Motion
motion
to
and then a second from Counselor Sanchez. Counselor Sanchez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that Job Connect gives individuals an opportunity to earn a little bit of money, not having any kind of qualifications, and it's kind of a direct step to actually employment. And I think that Job Connect would actually help a lot of citizens that don't have. And we can put them in a situation where if they have a hand up and want some help, then they can go out and they can earn some money each day. And I think Job Connect can develop into something very, very special. Thank you.
Counselor Feeblecorn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just trying to keep a rolling tally here. With this amendment, what would the final be for the Gibson Health Hub operating? I think it's well below $1 million now. I am not.
Mr. Muniz?
Madam Chair, Council Feeblecorn, reducing this 300,000 would leave about $8.4 million in the Gibson Health Hub operating under Family and Community Services.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And can the administration speak to what that number does as opposed to what was originally proposed?
Madam Chair and Councilor Feeblecorn and councilors, in the committee substitute, there was already a 1.5 million reduction that is part of the, if you will, the base bill that we're working off of tonight. Another 300,000 obviously creates even a bigger issue for the operations. So I was going to say to Councilors Grout and Councilor Sanchez, look, we funded this program last year out of one-time funds that we had available. Unfortunately, as anything else that we do with budgeting, it didn't quite get to the point that we were able to fund this program. I would suggest Councilor Sanchez and Councilor Grout from a friendly amendment, if you would consider, if you will, on line 1 of your amendment, instead of taking the funds from the Gibson Health Hub operating program, that we take it out of the early retirement program. It is a program that is obviously fluctuates on a year-by-year basis, and we always usually clean that program up mid-year. This would leave the Gibson Health Hub operating funds at the level that the committee substitute and that we agreed with the chair of the committee of the whole, and would then fund the program for the ongoing fiscal year. So it's a friendly amendment just to get the program funded.
And before I go to the sponsors to see if they would be willing to accept that, in the explanation, it also says that this is pending a successful pilot program. So is this to say that another 300,000 would be allocated if they already use up the 500,000 that is already allocated in the committee substitute? Mr. Muniz, do you know if that was the intention, if that's what's written in here? It says pending a successful pilot program. So is this just dedicating a total of 800,000 to the Job Connect program? Or is this allocating the 500,000 in there plus 300 if they need it?
Madam Chair, my understanding is that 300,000 is in case they need it, if the program is successful, in order to continue it.
And so Councilor Sanchez, Councilor Grout, I know that the administration, Mr. Real, said that he wanted to offer the suggestion to change Gibson Health Hub operating to early retirement. I go to one or both of you for that.
I'm a little confused at how that works again, if you can explain that, Mr. Rael, how you will actually handle that, because I'm open to that suggestion.
Madam Chair, Councilor Grout and Councilor Sanchez, I would read the amendment to the, I would propose, you all would propose an amendment to the amendment that on page 2, line 23, and then it would be entitled Early Retirement, decrease the amount by 300,000, and then the rest stays the same. It just simply finds a different line item to fund the program and leaves the Gibson Health funds as we agree to in the committee substitute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What is, Mr. Rao, what does that exactly do to the early retirement?
So, Madam Chair and Councilor Sanchez, the early retirement program is an estimate of what we believe would be paying out as people retire and separate from the city across the board. Every year, that's really a average, if you will, of the last 3 years of what we've spent or how many folks might be retiring. Depending on what, the economics are for individuals and they make the decision to go into early retirement. But that's a program that we clean up every year as a result of either we underestimate or some cases more people separate from the city. So it's always a program that we have to come back and clean up. A $300,000 decrease to that program won't make a big difference in terms of our ability to manage that fund.
Perfect. Councilor Grout, I'm open to that friendly amendment. What do you think?
Councilor Grout?
Madam Chair, Councilor Sanchez, I'm open to it as well.
So it sounds to me, I believe this can be done, but Mr. Melendrez, if you can confirm, instead of this reading on page 3, line 24, entitled Gibson Health Hub Operating, change it to on page 2, line 23, entitled Early Retirement, decrease the amount by 300,000.
Madam Chair, yes, there are two ways that can be done. If both of the sponsors concur with changing their amendment in that form, then the amendment will be changed and you can vote on the amendment with one vote. If the sponsors do not concur with that change, then you could move an amendment to the amendment to make that change before a final vote on the ultimate amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Melendrez, for the confirmation. It sounds to me from what Councilors Grout and Sanchez said that they both are okay with the change. Councilors Grout and Sanchez to close.
Thank you. Councilor Grout and I will, since we just discussed it right over the error here, I'd like to make that amendment to the amendment.
No, Councilor Sanchez, you can do that if you want, but since you both agree to it, we can just go ahead and make that change.
Thank you. Let's do it.
And just go ahead and vote on the amendment as newly dictated.
That is perfectly fine. Thank
Councilor
you.
Grout, do you have anything to add to close?
Madam Chair, thank you. No, I don't. I do agree with the amended, or changing the wording.
Ms. Hinojos for the vote, please.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Fiebelkorn,
Yes.
Counselor Grout,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Councilors, Amendment K is number 11. Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On line 2, line 12, entitled Strategic Support, increase the amount by 10,000. The amendment is restoring sponsorship for Tarde de Oro that was removed from the proposed 2024 budget. Tarde de Oro is a senior citizen-focused production that celebrates the rich, unique culture of New Mexico and the American Southwest. I just happened to be able to just go to that performance, and I urge every single person in this room to go see that performance. It highlights all the cultures in Albuquerque and New Mexico, highlights them to a degree that is just unbelievable. The performance is so good that it receives a standing ovation every single time. This program should actually be put as a highlight, as a showcase of our city. I urge everybody to go check this thing out. I think Counselor Pena has been there before, right? And it is just it's a jewel. It's a jewel for us here in Albuquerque, and it should actually be used as a highlight for our great city. Thank you.
There is, there's a motion, and do we have a second from Councilor Feeblecorn? My question to start out is, where is this money coming from?
Madam Chair, these funds would come from available fund balance in the general fund.
So we need to make sure that that gets added into the amendment, please.
Madam Chair, the amendment packet was updated to include that language, just if you want to check your iPads just in case, but the printed copies did not show that.
I probably might need to refresh my iPad because it's not showing up like that, but as long as it's available there. So Councilor Feeblecorn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to say, of course, I support this, and I was a little disappointed to see that some of the councilor sponsorships like this one were removed from the budget this year. I was, under the impression that that was not how we did things here. So I'm glad that Councilor Sanchez was on the ball and looking for that, and hopefully we won't have that problem in the future.
Councilor, while you brought that up, I want to say that I know I said this last year. I don't plan on being cow chair next year, but for whoever is, I would really like to encourage both the administration and the council to look in advance, like in August, at the sponsorships. Which are the ones you want to keep? Which are the ones that you don't even know about, so that we can clean this up? And while we're here, I would like to urge the public who are getting some of these sponsorships to reach out and let us know that this is still important, because some of us, really, these are sort of grandfathered in, and I think that just because it's always been there is not okay with me anymore. And consider this my like next year's warning, if I'm around still, that, I really hope that this is not just going to be one of those, just because we've always done it, we're going to keep doing it. Let's clean it up. Councilors, any other questions or comments? All right. Ms. Hinojos, please.
Counselor Benton.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn.
Yes.
Counselor Grout.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Lewis.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan. Passes unanimously.
Councilors, Amendment L, number 12. This is going to Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item L, amendment number 12, I believe, is that right? I misunderstood. Thank you. This is an amendment that moves, I think the administration may ask us to take this out of early retirement again or somewhere else, at least to get us to Monday. I guess that means Mr. Real's not retiring till then. So the amendment moves $150,000 from somewhere into the city council for purpose of conducting a feasibility study to create a public guarantor program to prevent homelessness and housing insecurity. Councilors, this is a proposal that's come out of some of those housing coordinating councils and other community organizations that are working through this. But basically, it would create an entity such as a nonprofit or work with a nonprofit to be a co-signer for renters that have trouble qualifying for any number of reasons, including some gaps, maybe some credit gaps, or folks that have to have so much money in the bank in order to prove they can pay 9 months of rent before they will even be able to sign a lease. This has worked successfully in other cities. This would not establish the program. It helps us figure out how to do this, and then if it's viable to do. And so for the moment, we're going to park this in council services so we can develop the appropriate metrics and terms for how to approach that as a next step for moving folks from temporary housing who may not have credit scores or other things to qualify into more permanent long-term housing. So I'll move this as Amendment 12.
Councilors, there's a motion. Is there a second? Second from Councilor Jones. Mr. Ryle?
Madam Chair and Councilor Davis, again, I would be remiss if I didn't, obviously, in fairness to everyone else, that we would love to have the opportunity to work on this. This is an important project. However, where the funding is coming from, if we might be able to work on Monday and see if we can find another option. Obviously, if you want to pass it tonight, we can always review it on Monday. That would be helpful.
Madam Chair, Mr. Real, I do feel like Gibson is still going to be a hot topic on Monday. Would it be best in this amendment at the moment to do it as early retirement or somewhere else so that we can make that adjustment on Monday and have a real, like a real budget for Gibson, or do you care? And I'm committed to doing whatever needs to be done with the administration. I agree with you.
Okay. If we can, I think the best thing for us would be if we could wait till Monday and work it out on Monday, if that works for you,
For the amendment itself?
for the amendment itself.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I will, if the staff will remind me and put this back in the packet, we'll bring that back and hopefully work on that. Thank you.
Counselors, amendment number 12 was withdrawn. You did do a motion on that, right? Yeah, okay. Is withdrawn. We're going to move on to amendment M, number 13, Counselor Davis by request.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you noted, this is by request, and so I'm going to ask for some backup from the long table down here. This would would transfer 25 vacant security positions from GSD to a new dedicated transit security program, but within APD. Those, as we've heard for months on end and years really for some of us, transit security needs specific technical training. APD is willing to provide that for those sort of intermediary duties, which can be managed through the training academy. This sort of gets us back to a little bit of how we used to do this back in the day, and it's sort of a hybrid. So I'm going to move this as an amendment, Madam Chair. If we have a second, I'd ask the administration to help me a little bit. This is their idea about how to address a council concern, and I'd love to hear their explanation.
There's a motion and a second from Counselor Feeblecorn. Mr. Rail?
Madam Chair and Counselor Davis and members of the council, so we've been talking about this issue with transit and the challenges that that our transit system faces on a daily basis. The council passed, if you will, some time ago, a resolution basically directing the administration to come together with a plan to fund a security program that would obviously provide security on buses and in transits, if you will, stations and if you will, bus stations as well. In having the conversations with the Transit Department and with our Metro Security Division of the General Services Department, it really is incumbent that the training piece, and I know that many of you through the last couple of council meetings have heard from members of the Security Division or representatives talking about the fact that they're concerned about safety, they're concerned about training, concerned about uniforms, et cetera, and we've heard that concern. Part of this conversation really started when at one of the last council meetings, the chief and I visited a bit and talked about the need to perhaps move a unit, if you will, out of the Metro Security Division of Department of General Services and moving it over to APD. And the idea here would be is to create an APD Transit Security Division that would be managed and by the police department in conjunction with their PSA program, if you will. And these individuals that would serve in these positions would obviously carry the equipment, communication equipment particularly, to be able to contact APD officers as they do their work throughout the city, and be assigned to each of the area commands as necessary to provide a stronger coordination between APD and this division or this new division. It will help, in my opinion, create a much more of a presence of safety, and it is a way to really restructure what was there before. If you'll recall, for those of you who have been in the council for some years, Transit used to have its own security division. Unfortunately, it was a standalone division within Transit, and we were somewhat reinventing the whole communication structure. When Mayor Keller came into office, there were some real challenges with that program, and unfortunately, because of some personnel issues, et cetera, we had to restructure the program. As we've gone through to the council's direction to do free bus service, it just became apparent that we need to create a much stronger security, if you will, connection with our transit system, and we believe this is an opportunity to do that and to really hire some individuals that have much more experience and give them the training and the equipment and support that they need to do that job. So this is still a work in progress. We have several months before we have to report to the council on this effort, but this really sets the budget and the idea of a transit security division at APD going forward.
Counselor Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question to the administration is, are these individuals going to be trained law enforcement officers? Are they going to have state certification? What are we going to need to do in reference to make sure that we're not skirting DOJ efforts when we put this unit into force? This is something that is a little bit just a little worrisome based on the fact that these individuals need to have the training if they're going to be tied in with APD. I know for years we actually had the aviation police tied in with APD, and they actually were integrated with everything, the full batch, everything. Do these people have the qualifications? Do they have the background? Do they have the testing ability to actually be put in this area? Have they gone through the testing process that Mrs. Loctron actually puts through? These are questions that are concerning to me based on the fact are we actually pulling in an individual who is well qualified to do the job? There is a vetting process at the police department, and in order to circumvent policing, I think that all of these things need to be put in place, so when you get right down to the nitty-gritty, you might as well just be working on hiring more police officers with those same standards.
Mr. Rao.
Madam Chair and Councilor Sanchez, these are vacant positions that would be transferred to APD. So the individuals that would be hired into these positions would be individuals that would set up a structure and the standards through the department. At this point, we're working through the process. It is not at this point the intention, however, as we move through this discussion with the council, it is not our intention at this point to make these individuals be certified law enforcement officers as much as we would provide a higher level of security training and connection with APD so that as issues present themselves in the corridor, these individuals will have the ability to issue citations. They would have the ability to move folks along, if you will, and deal with issues, but also have a direct communication with APD and have a police officer respond to that. So we're not quite at the point, Councilor Sanchez, where I could say to you that these are fully our law enforcement officers. These are positions that are funded in the budget, so if we left them in GSD, they would be in GSD just as security officers, and they would be assigned to transit. I think this is a no regrets move in that we're getting an opportunity to really make that connection with APD in a more directed way, especially because we're leaving it at the area command, where those area commanders can now ensure that the patrols officers are connecting with the security group. In many ways, a lot like the PSAs that are in the department. So that's where the thinking is as it relates to this amendment.
Counselor Sanchez and then Counselor Pena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm still concerned. I really would have liked to have had the conversation with you, Mr. Rael, in reference to this, so we could have worked this whole thing out. I'm still very, very concerned about us doing two things: one, circumventing, and then putting individuals out there that don't have the proper training. I honestly believe that that if we're going to be dealing with someone that's going to be moving towards the police department, you have a massive vetting process with anybody that goes into the police system. There's backgrounds that are done. There's testing that's done. There's actual boards that are actually handled through through the administration and the police department. We want to make sure that we've got the best of the best officers. So for this to be just transferring 25 individuals over, it just does not sit well with me. I truly wish we would have talked about this prior to, and based on what I'm seeing here, I can't support it, and I'm not even sure if we've even talked to the individuals who have who actually would be doing this. How do they feel? We haven't heard from them yet. So there's quite a few things that I think this still needs to go through. So with that, I'll pass it over to.
Counselor Pena.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I'm wondering if we can just hold off on this one till Monday too, you know, because I had some conversations about looking at paying, similar to last year. You know, we have some employees like, what we've heard from is like the Sunvan drivers, the transit drivers, APD transport, who just are the pay is all over the place in terms of, and these are some of the lower paid employees of the city of Albuquerque, the clerical, and we're trying to figure out how to make some kind of adjustment through a percentage, but we're being told because of the comp study that, you know, this is going to be the tool to do that. So by moving these vacant positions to APD, putting them as in the academy, like cadets, I think was mentioned, this is part of one of the problems. If you look at what the cadets are making, and this is an email that we had all received, you know, they're at 2884, and then so are we going to bring these 25 positions, because obviously they're not funded at 28, so it would reduce the number of positions. It would seem as though to whatever it is to come to that 28, if that's what you're looking at. And then we have like the APD transport officers who are at 23. That's a huge discrepancy. And then for the security guards and APD transport, and you know, they're taking all the people who have been arrested, and then also in addition to that, they're actually taking people from other municipalities. So I'm not that I'm not supportive, but just kind of some of the arguments against putting this percentage forward were because of the class and comp study and how we need to really look at that and make those changes initially. I just have more questions.
Counselor Davis.
I'm sorry, no, if it was just to close, I'd be happy to do that.
Well, I don't know if you wanted to, I think Counselor Pena was asking if we wait till Monday or not.
Counselor, I understand, totally agree with what you're saying. Here's what I'm thinking though, and I understand. I think this council sort of said and thanks to your leadership, has said that we wanted to do a safety plan. We've told them that we want safety and security officers in transit. I like putting this money there, but I want to ask Mr. Real really quickly as a follow-up. Mr. Real, at the current moment, the current security officers in Metro and GSD are AFSCME represented. Is that, as I recall?
Mr. President, Madam Chair, excuse me, and Mr. President, yes.
And Madam Chair, Mr. Real, if they move to APD, depending on the new the new job description classification and the bargaining unit clarifications, they would still be eligible for union membership, we would assume, right? It sounds to me like they'd still be covered there, that it may be a different class or a different unit. Is that the intent of the administration?
That's correct.
I appreciate that. So I think we should put the money there, and that would give us a better framework, in my opinion, to work on before Monday, either through decide that this is part of class and comp and make that clear. But I think I'd rather have the money in APD for transit before we leave today, so it's absolutely clear that we're going to fund that. And so I understand, and I'd be happy to work on some of the technical pieces, but I'd rather move the amendment tonight if we can. If it fails, I'm happy to bring it back in a different form on Monday.
All right, counselors, that's, Mr. Muniz.
Madam Chair, nothing exciting. Just wanted to point out the amendment needs to be corrected. It should read on page 4, line 21, entitled security, and on the number 2, it should say on page 6, line 5.
Is that okay, Counselor Davis?
I'm sure the clerk could make the correction, so yes.
Okay. All right, counselors, we'll go ahead. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Benton.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn.
Yes.
Counselor Grout.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Lewis.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
No.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
It passes on an 8-1 vote.
Thank you, Ms. Hinojos. Counselor Feeblecorn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am so sorry, but I am being told that my amendment number 5, which was Amendment E in our packets, I asked if we should pass it tonight, and we were going back and forth. We apparently should not have passed it tonight. This is the amendment that just made sure that the Prosperity Works money went from environmental health along with the Sustainability Office over to GSD. They have now clarified that that was definitely in the first amendment of the night, that was the cleanup packet. And so Ms. Yara has asked that I move for a reconsideration of amendment number 5 so that we can, thank you. And so I would move that I do not move amendment number 5.
We're going to do a motion for reconsideration right now with a second from Counselor Pena. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Benton.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn.
Yes.
Counselor Grout.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Lewis.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
So Counselor Feeblecorn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to withdraw amendment number 5.
I don't think a second is necessary, but let's just double check that we're doing this all the right way, that we have withdrawn and we should be good to go.
Madam Chair, the procedure you followed has been impeccable. The motion was withdrawn, and it is no longer part of the bill.
He never tells me that.
Well, all right. Well, with that, we're gonna keep going. So all of the amendments tonight have been heard. Some will come back on Monday. I imagine we can anticipate a few more. So now we will vote, counselors, on R123 as substituted and amended. Ms. Hinojos?
Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Rayal.
Madam Chair, if I might, before the vote, I'd like to just, first of all, thank you and the staff of the Budget Office for working with us on this committee substitute. As we have proceed to this process, it can be very challenging at times, and I do appreciate your leadership and your willing to provide the information to the administration and to work with us on many of these amendments. And I think on the whole, it's a committee substitute that we can support. I would just want to make a few comments about the amendments that are incorporated into the committee substitute, and particularly one that is some concern as it relates to the Office of Equity and Inclusion. The Office of Equity and Inclusion is a initiative that really, quite frankly, has come through the community and was part of the council's early in Mayor Keller's administration, an issue and a subject that was supported by the council back several years ago. This amendment or the change in the committee substitute does provide, however, a concern that I just want to make sure that the councilors are aware of, and that we all need to be, I think, mindful about the impact that it has. That amendment is an amendment in the committee substitute that reduces that office by $330,000. As we look at the office budget, et cetera, it has come to my attention that all the positions in that office are filled today. In order to reduce that amount, it would require potentially, if you will, reducing the workforce in that particular area. And as I look at the number of employees and the offices or the work that these employees perform, I just want to put on for you all to think about as we move to the Monday meeting. We would have to probably reduce at least two positions, maybe even 3. And when I look at the positions that are in that department, we have a African American community liaison position. We have the tribal relations liaison position. We have the Missing and Indigenous Women's Position Liaison. There are some really critical positions in that operation that really speak to the constituencies that are unfortunately underrepresented in our city government, but also are positions that really create an opportunity to engage with these communities throughout our city. I recognize that we were trying to get to a balanced budget, and I appreciate that, Madam Chair. I would respectfully request that potentially if we could work through this particular adjustment to the committee substitute on working through the weekend, if you will, or at least presenting something to you all on Monday. It is a $330,000, if you will, adjustment. We would take it upon the administration to look for the funds for that particular office so that we could not have to impact the good work that's going on those really important fronts. So aside from that, Madam Chair, look, the adjustments that were made to ACS, the adjustments that were made to the Gibson Health Hub, we understand. We know that, that we have to work together, and whereas I would have preferred not to have any more adjustments to those projects, you know, it's part of the give and take of the process. The other one I would also just would be remiss if I didn't make a comment about, and that is, we did have a new initiative in the planning department. And that initiative was to look at dilapidated buildings and that create some real challenges for us in the community as it relates to safety, et cetera, especially as we know that those buildings become health hazards for our community. There was an opportunity there to create a position, if you will, an attorney position, an associate to support moving forward with condemnations of buildings that need to be, if you will, removed in our neighborhoods, in our community, because they're just not at the level of being used for other purposes other than, in some cases, for some mischief, if you will. So that initiative was also left at the table in terms of the committee substitute. Perhaps down the road we can come back and look at that, but that is an important, I think, initiative also to ensure that we have the public safety and we're focusing on what's happening in the community as a whole. But with that being said, Madam Chair, we appreciate the work, and we would love to be able to sit back and see if we can't manage these issues on Monday night's meeting. Thank you so much.
I do have some response to both of those, but Councillor Lewis?
Madam Chair, I just recommend that we just, if we could move, why don't we move it without recommendation, and I'll make that motion if you'd like.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for without recommendation. And I do want to add a couple comments on that. As far as the extinction team, I could say that there were several counselors that had some issues with where we were at with the proposal and not quite all the way. And then as far as the Office of Equity and Inclusion, you know, with some of the commentary, I don't think I've ever seen yet in my inbox, and I hope I'm wrong, but I've never gotten the response of some of the measures that were requested in that department and that division in that office. So, you know, I'm still waiting to hear some of the metrics and the data that we asked for. And in addition to that, this was an office that, as important as it is, was originally funded with grant funds during COVID. Then last year it was brought to, I believe, I know I brought it up, so, you know, there were no grants received again this year. So, you know, this is a department that I think is very important. However, it would be really good to maybe use the grant analyst that we have added into the committee substitute in order to maybe assist with some of that. But with that, there's a motion. Actually, hang on, Mr. Melendres, hold on. I'm going to change my motion to without recommendation instead, so that we don't have to do one vote and have it fail. But I don't know who gave the second to the original one. Councilor Feeblecorn? Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Now it's changed to without recommendation for Monday's meeting, as substituted and amended. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Benton?
Yes.
Counselor Davis?
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn?
Yes.
Counselor Grout?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Lewis?
Yes.
Counselor Pena?
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez?
Yes.
Counselor Bassan?
Oh, yes.
That passes unanimously.
Counselors, I'd like to make a motion for immediate action of R-123 as substituted and, oh, I guess I don't have to. Wait, no, I do. I do. Never mind. As substituted and amended. Thank you. Second from Counselor Feeblecorn. Ms. Hinojos.
Counselor Benton?
Yes.
Counselor Davis?
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn?
Yes.
Counselor Grout?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Lewis?
Yes.
Counselor Pena?
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez?
Yes.
Counselor Bassan?
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
I heard some people say they didn't think we'd get out before 8. There being no further business, this committee of the whole meeting is adjourned, and we will see you all on Monday. Thank you.